They were still huddled there when the new tumult began in the city. The sun had set, the bugles had rung and ceased, the gun had crashed from the old citadel and clapped and reverberated away, and the huddled regiment was already fading into one neutral mass in the middle of the parade ground.
That's my security right there, so you can respect.
Yes, you are.
What page is the ribbon in the book on?
You pocket watching my book consumption right now? Who donated that? Anonymous donated $10 to ask what page the ribbon in the book is on. Blood's trying to see how far I am into the book, bro. Okay. I bet you thought I was on page 0, but it turns out I'm on page 231. Donate another $10 and I'll read a page. I'll read 231. You trying to fucking challenge me, claim that I'm not capable of reading? I'm at a 3rd grade reading level, bro. Anyway, thank you for the donation. Daisy is now spamming the donation link, which if you donate to that link specifically instead of Super Chat, not only do I get 100% of the donations, which is a W, you don't give any money to Google Corp, but you also get text-to-speech, you get funny voice read message directly so that everyone has to hear it. Thank you. Thank you, Anonymous.
I'm a bad
Oh, fuck.
boy.
Okay. What did he say?
Okay, that's 2 pages then.
Bruh. Okay. $10 to read a page in a book? Okay, sure. Do you want to know what book this is at least? The book, okay, my good friends, is A Fable by William Faulkner, okay? I paid $20 for this beautiful rendition of it. Beautiful, beautiful. I couldn't resist, in fact. I was seduced. And so, here, we'll give you, okay, page 230, okay, wait. Let's give you 230 and 231, so we'll get both the books, the pages, okay? Okay. So I'll give you a bit of context first, let's see. Okay. You're not hungry, she said. Did that look like we want your food? The woman said. That's what I said, the sister said. Now you don't have to grieve. Then the woman snatched the spoon from the pot and threw it at the sister, but it missed. That is, as the woman stooped and scrabbled for the next missile, it was a wine bottle half full of vinegar, she realized that the spoon had struck nothing, that none of the 3 strangers had even ducked, as though the spoon had vanished into thin air as it left her hand. And when she threw the bottle, she couldn't see the 3 women at all. It struck a man in the back and caromed, vanishing as the whole crowd surged, baying the 3 strangers in a little ring of space like hounds holding fixed but still immune some animals not feared but which had completely confounded them by violating all the rules of chase and flight, so that as hounds fall still and for a moment even cease to whimper, the crowd even stopped yelling and merely held the 3 women in a ring of gaped, suspended uproar until the woman who threw the spoon broke through, carrying a tin mug and 2 briquettes, and flung them without aim, the crowd baying and surging again as Marthe turned, half carrying the girl in one arm and pushing the sister on ahead with the other hand, walking steadily, the crowd falling away in front and closing behind, so that the flexing intact ring itself seemed to advance as they did, like a miniature whirlpool in a current. Then the woman, screaming now, darted and stooped to a scatter of horse droppings among the cobbles, and began to hurl the dried globules, which might have been briquettes too, but for hue and durability. So she's trying to throw horse shit. But I like this description. Darted and stooped to a scatter of horse droppings among the cobbles, and began to hurl the dried globules. Dried globules, dude. That's you. You're a dried globule, and I'm gonna hurl you against the fucking wall.
Conquer the world.
Alright, so back to the dried horse shit globules. Marth stopped and turned, the girl half hanging from the crook of her arm, the sister's ageless, interested face watching from behind her shoulder, while refuse of all sorts, scraps of food, rubbish, sticks, cobbles from the street itself, rained about them. A thread of blood appeared suddenly at the corner of her mouth, but she didn't move, until after a time her immobility seemed to stay the missiles too, and the gaped, crowding faces merely bayed at them again. The sound filling the alley and roaring from wall to wall until the reverberations had a quality not only frantic, but cachinant. Well, you got a page and a half left, buddy. Hope your $20 was worth it to go to sleep. Okay, so there's, for context, a crowd is flaying garbage at a woman. What's up? Oh, we more. Hey, Acrobus, thank you for the $10, my friend. Mwah, thank you, bro. We more. What does we more mean? Does we more mean read more? Or does it just mean we more? Like, is that... I don't fucking know. Alright, I'll just read more. Okay. Recoiling and... Okay. Here we go. I'll start from the top here. Okay. From wall to wall until the reverberations had a quality not only frantic, but cachinant, recoiling and compounding as it gathered strength, rolling on alley by alley and street to street until it must have been beating along the boulevard's respectable fringes too. The patrol, it was a mounted provost marshal's party, met them at the first corner. The crowd burst, because this was a charge. The yelling rose a whole octave without transition, like flipping over a playing card. As motionless again, the three women watched the crowd stream back upon them. They stood in a rushing vacuum while the mass divided and swept past on either hand, in front of and beneath and behind the running horses. The cobble clashing fire, ringing hooves, and the screams dying away into the single vast murmur of the whole city's tumult. Leaving the alley empty, save for the three women, when the NCO leader... NCO? Like Fallout? North... What is it? New California? Fucking... What is it in Fallout? NCO. Nope. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. That's not Fallout. Fuck's NCO. Military officer who does not hold a commission. I see. So basically a... Okay, I don't know what the fuck. Non-commissioned officer, appointed by a commissioned officer, generally to supervise enlisted soldiers and aid the commissioned officer corps. Okay, interesting. Where have I heard this before? Oh yeah, new commentary order. Holy shit, that's a... New commentary order was a group that the right opinion... You know, Jay Aubrey, Nerd City, a lot of like classic commentary guys were a part of, including me. I was a part of it technically too. It was basically just a group chat. But yes, NCO used to be what that was. I'm losing my mind. Anyway, let's keep going. Cobble clashing fire, ringing hooves, and the screams dying away into the single vast murmur of the whole city's tumult. Leaving the alley empty save for the three women when the NCO leader of the patrol reined his horse and held it, short-bitted, ammoniac, and reek spreading and bouncing a little against the snaffle, while he glared down at them. "Where do you live?" he said. They didn't answer. Staring up at him, the wan girl, the tall, calm woman, the quicking and serene approval of the sister. The non-commissioned officer listened for an instant to the distant tumult, Then he looked at them again. All right, he said harshly. Get out of town while you can. Come on now, get started. We belong here too, Marth said. For a second he glared down at them. He and the horses in high sharp fading silhouette against the sky itself, filled with anguish and fury. Is the whole damn world crowding here to crucify a bastard the army's gonna fix anyway? He said in a thin, furious exasperation. Yes, Marth said. Then he was gone. He slacked the horse. Its iron feet clashed and sparkled on the cowls. The hot reek sucked after it, pungent for a fading instant. Who the fuck just bonked my head? Is this a Diddy novel, bro? Phil, you got too much brain rot, bro. You got too much brain rot, my friend. And you know what? There's a simple cure to that. And it's a fucking punch in the head. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. Welcome, Phil. Thank you for joining us. I hope you join the Discord and continue to donate. Thank you, bro. Dickhead. He slacked the horse. Its iron feet clashed and sparked on the cobbles. The hot reek sucked after it, pungent for a fading instant. Then even the galloping had faded into the sound of the city. Come, Marth said. They went on. At first she seemed to be leading them away from the sound, but presently she seemed to be leading them straight back to it. She turned into an alley, then into another, not smaller but emptier, deserted, with an air about it of back premises. But she seemed to know where she was going, or at least what she was looking for. She was almost carrying the girl now, until the sister moved up unbidden and exchanged the empty basket to the other arm, and took half the girl's weight. And then they went quite rapidly, on to the end of the alley, and turned the wall, and there was what Marth had gone as directly to, as if she had not only known it was there, but had been to it before. An empty stone stall, a byre, or stable niched into the city's night-fading flank. There was even a thin litter of dry straw on the stone floor, and once inside, although the sound was still audible, it was as though they had established armistice with the tumult and the fury. Not that it should evacuate the city in their favor, but at least it should approach no nearer. Marth didn't speak. She just stood supporting the girl while the sister set down the empty basket and knelt, and with quick, deft, darting motions, like a little girl readying a doll's house, she spread the straw evenly, and then removed her shawl and spread it over the straw, and still kneeling, helped Marth lower the girl onto the shawl, and took the other shawl, which Marth removed from her shoulder, and spread it over the girl. Then they lowered themselves onto the straw on either side of the girl, and as Marth drew the girl to her for warmth, the sister reached and got the basket, and not even triumphant, with another of those clumsy, darting, childlike motions, which at the same time were deft, or at least efficient, or anyway, successful. She took from the basket which everyone had seen empty itself, when the woman at the fire threw it at her, a piece of broken bread, a little larger than 2 fists. She got bread. Again, Marth said nothing. She just took the bread from the sister and started to break it. W! They evaded the fucking pandemonium of the angry crowd, the guffaw. And she sniped a little piece of bread. That's a W. Anyway, thank you for the donation. If you want to read more pages, you know what to do, but I appreciate the donation as always, and I hope that was in some way worth it. But yeah, who just donated? Oh, Phil did again. Thank you, bro. This is what Sneeko read as the dude fucked his girlfriend. Whoa, Phil. Whoa. Relax, bro. He's already dead, man. Anyway, thank you for the donation. Okay, I'll read 3 pages for Lumi, and then I'll read 2 after I talk about FouseyTube. Because I did want to complete my thoughts on FouseyTube. Okay, here we go. So we're picking up after the crowd, okay, the angry mob, okay, 3 women have avoided successfully the angry mob who were throwing horse shit at them, otherwise known as dried horse globules, okay? Whew. And guess what? Even after they evaded the angry mob, one of the sisters, or one of the women, pulled out a piece of bread. A piece of bread! Alright, and so she just took the bread from the sister and started to break it. In 3, the sister said, and took the 3rd fragment when Marth broke it and put it back into the basket, and they reclined again. The girl between them, eating. It was almost dark now. What little light remained seemed to have gathered about the door's worn lintel with a tender, nebulous quality like a worn, lost halo. The world outside but little lighter than the stone interior. The chilling, sweating stone which seemed not to conduct nor even contain but to exude like its own moisture. The murmur of the unwearying night. A sound no longer... What little light remained seemed to have gathered about the door's worn lintel with a tender, nebulous quality, like a worn, lost halo. The world outside but little lighter than the stone interior. The chill, sweating stone which seemed not to conduct nor even contain but to exude like its own moisture. The murmur of the unwearying city. A sound no longer ocularly but merely intellectually disturbing, like the breathing of a sick puppy or a sick child. But when the other sound began, they stopped chewing. They stopped at the same instant. When they sat up, it was together, as though a spreader bar connected them, sitting each with a fragment of bread in one poised hand, listening. It was beneath the first sound, beyond it, human too, but not the same sound at all because the old one had women in it. The mass voice of the ancient limitless mammalian capacity, not for suffering, but for grieving, wailing, to endure incredible anguish, because it could become vocal without shame or self-consciousness, passing from gland to tongue without transition through thought. While the new one was made by men, and though they didn't know where the prisoner's compound was, nor even, nobody had taken time to tell them yet, that the regiment was in a compound anywhere, they knew at once what it was. Hear them? The sister said, serene in an astonished and happy approval, so rapt that Marth's movement caused her to look up only after the other had risen, and was already stooping to rouse the girl, whereupon the sister reached again with that deft, unthinking, immediate clumsiness, and took the fragment of bread from Marth, and put it in and her own fragment back into the basket with the 3rd one, and rose to her knees, and began to help raise the girl, speaking in a tone of happy anticipation. "Where are we going now?" she said. "To the mare," Marth said. "Get the basket." She did so. She had to gather up both the shawls too, which delayed her a little, so that when she was on her feet, Marth, supporting the girl, had already reached the door. But even for a moment yet, the sister didn't follow. Standing, clutching the shawls and the basket, her face lifted slightly in rapt and pleased astonishment, in the murmurous last of light which seemed to have brought into the damp stone cubicle not merely the city's simple anguish and fury, but the city itself in all its impervious splendor. Even inside the stone, single-stalled stable, it seemed to rise in glittering miniature. Tower and spire tall enough and high enough to soar in sunlight, still though, dark, had fallen. High enough and tall enough above earth's old miasmic Mists for the glittering and splendid pinnacles, never to be in darkness at all, perhaps. Invincible, everlasting, and vast. He will wear a fine sword here, she said. Damn. Look, here's the thing with Faulkner that I've picked up on. This motherfucker writes genuinely beautifully, but he is so fucking notorious for having just crazy run-on sentences that almost feel manic in how long they keep going. It really does take a while to like get used to. But yeah, man, the descriptions here are beautiful. Shortly before sunset, the last strand of wire enclosing the new compound had been run and joined, and the electric current turned into it. Then the whole regiment, with the exception of the 13 special prisoners who were in a separate cell to themselves, were turned out of the barracks. They were not released. They were evicted, not by simultaneous squads of guards, nor even by one single roving detachment moving rapidly. Alert, compact, and heavily armed from barracks to barracks, but by individual Senegalese. Armed sometimes with a bayoneted rifle, and sometimes merely with the naked bayonet carried like a brush knife or a swagger stick, and sometimes with nothing at all. They appeared abruptly and without warning in each room, and drove its occupants out, hustling them with a scornful and contemptuous expedition toward the door, not even waiting to follow but going along with them, each one already well up into the middle of the ground before it even reached the door, and still pressing on toward the head of it, prodding each his own moving path with the reversed rifle or the bayonet's handle, and even within the ruck, moving faster than it moved, riding head and shoulders not merely above the moving mass, but as though on it, gaudy, Ethiop, and contemptuous, resembling harlequined trees uprooted, say for the wild lands, the tameless antipodal fields, moving rigid and upright above the dull, sluggish current of a city-soiled commercial canal. What a fucking description. So, the Senegalese would actually be leading each group when it emerged into its company street. Nor would they even stop them, not even waiting to pair off in couples, let alone in squads, but seeming to stride once or twice, still carrying the bayoneted rifles or the bayonets like the spears and knives of a lion or antelope hunt, and vanish as individual and abrupt as they had appeared. So, when the regiment, unarmed, unshaven, hatless, and half-dressed, began to coalesce without command into the old sheep-like molds of a platoon and company, it found that nobody was paying any attention to it at all, that it had been deserted even by the bayonets which had evicted it out of doors. But for a while, yet, it continued to shuffle and grope for the old familiar alignments, blinking a little after the dark barracks in the glare of sunset. Then it began to move. There were no commands from anywhere. The squads and sections simply fell in between the old file markers and closers and began to flow, drift as though by some gentle and even unheeded gravitation, into companies in the barrack streets, into battalions onto the parade ground, and stopped. It was not a regiment yet, but rather a shapeless mass in which only the squads and platoons had any unity, as the coherence of an evicted city obtains only in the household groups which stick together, not because the members are kin in blood, but because they have eaten together and slept together and grieved and hoped and fought among themselves so long, huddling immobile and blinking beneath the high unclimbable wire and the searchlights and machine gun platforms and lounging scornful guards and all the silhouette on the sunset, as if the lethal shock which charged the wire 10 minutes ago had the same instant electrocuted them all into inflexible arrestment against the end of time. They were still huddled there when the new tumult began in the city. The sun had set, the bugles had rung and ceased, the gun had crashed from the old citadel and clapped and reverberated away, and the huddled regiment was already fading into one neutral mass in the middle of the parade ground when the first faint yelling came across the plain. But they did nothing at first, except to become more still, as dogs do at the rising note of a siren about to reach some unbearable pitch which the human ear will not hear at all. In fact, when they did begin to make the sound, it was not human at all, but animal, not yelling, but howling, huddling still in the dusk, that fading and shapeless mass which might have been protoplasm itself, eyeless and tongueless on the floor of the first dividing of the sea, palpant and vociferant, with no motion nor sound of its own, but instead some gigantic uproar of the primal air-crashing tide's mighty copulation. While overhead on the catwalks and platforms, the Senegalese lounged on their rifles, or held to cigarettes, the small windless flames of lighters contrived of spent cartridge cases, as if the glare of day had hidden until now that which the dusk exposed, that the electric shock which had fixed them in carbon immobility had left here and there one random, not yet faded coal. The dusk seemed to have revealed to them the lighted window, too. It was in the old, once-ified wall of what had been the factory's main building. They might even have seen the man standing in it, though probably the window alone was enough. Not yelling, but howling, they began to flow across the compound, but the night moved still faster. The mass of them had already faded completely into it before they had crossed the parade ground, so that it was the sound, the howling, which seemed to roll on and crash and recoil and roar again against the wall beneath the lighted window, and the motionless silhouette of the man standing in it, and recoiled and rolled again, while a hurried bugle began to blat and whistles to shrill, and a close body of white infantry came rapidly around the corner and began to push them away from the wall with short jabbing blows of rifle butts. When the guard came for them, the corporal was still standing at the window, looking down at the uproar. The 13 of them were in a small, perfectly bare, perfectly impregnable, single-windowed cell, which obviously had been a strong room of some sort back in the old dead time when the factory had been merely a factory. A single dingy electric bulb burned in the center of the ceiling behind a wire cage like the end of a rat trap. It had been burning when they were herded into the room shortly after dawn this morning, and since it was American electricity, or that is, was already being charged daily 1 day in advance to the service of supply of the American Expeditionary Forces, it had been burning ever since. So, as the day succumbed to evening, the faces of the 13 men sitting quietly on the floor against one wall did not fade wanly back into the shadows, but rather, instead, emerged, not even wan, but unshaven and therefore even more virile, gathering to themselves an even further great ghastly and jaundiced strength. When the first stir of movement went through the compound as the Senegalese began to evict the regiment from the barracks, the 13 men sitting against the wall of the cell did not appear to respond to it, unless there might have been a further, completer stillness, an arrestment traveling as though they're from one to another among 12 of them. The half-turn of a face, the quick, almost infinitesimal side-glancing of an eye toward the 13th one, corporal, sitting in the center of them, who, the corporal, did not move at all until the first roar of yelling rolled across the parade ground and crashed like a wave against the wall beneath the window. Then the corporal rose to his feet, not quietly nor deliberately, so much as easily, as mountain men move, and went to the window, and, his hands lying as lightly and easily among the bars as they had lain on the lorry's top rail, stood looking down and yelling. He didn't seem to be listening to it, just looking at it, watching it pour across the compound to break in one inaudible crash beneath the window, in the wan glow from which the men themselves were now visible, The clenched fists, the pale individual faces which even gaped with yelling he may have recognized, have spent 4 years crouched with them behind bullet-snicked parapets, or trying bitten-tongued to flatten themselves into the stinking muck of shell craters beneath drumfire or rolling barrages, or flattened immobile and unbreathing beneath the hiss and whisper of flares on night patrols. He seemed to not listen to it, but to watch it, immobile and detached, while the frantic bugle yelped and the whistles shrilled and the infantry section burst on its collapsing flank and whirled it slowly away. He didn't move. He looked exactly like a stone-deaf man watching with interest, but neither surprise nor alarm, the pantomime of some cataclysm or even universal uproar, which neither threatens nor even concerns him, since, to him, it makes no sound at all. Then, heavy boots tramped and clashed in the corridor. The corporal turned from the window, and this time the other 12 faces moved too, lifting as one and pacing along the wall the tramp of the invisible feet beyond, until the fleet halted, so that they were all looking at the door when it opened and was flung back, and a sergeant, they were not Senghalese, nor even white infantry this time, but provost, marshal's people, stood in it and made a sweeping peremptory gesture with his arm. On your feet, he said. Damn, we get a picture. Fuck. Okay. Was that sufficient, Lumi?